Hi, everyone, and great to be here this evening. The topic we're addressing is not necessarily an easy one. It's not the kind of topic you actually want to talk about it at all, but it's a crucial one. And great to be here with some fellow professionals and just like-minded hearts and like-minded people. Just briefly, by way of introduction, my name is Craig Wilkinson. Work extensively with men throughout South Africa, encouraging them to be good fathers, or inspiring them, equipping them, helping them be good fathers, good mentors, and good role models. And sadly, living in the country we do, a country which I think we all have a bit of a love-hate relationship with. I certainly do. And the thing I love most about South Africa is just the people of South Africa. We have the most astounding individuals, and wherever I go around South Africa, just encounter just beautiful human beings with a heart of gold and doing amazing things. And so that's what really makes this country worth living. Apart from the diversity of animals and wildlife, we've got incredible diversity of people, but such good-hearted people. So I'll be addressing the issue of gender-based violence, and I want to come from a slightly different angle. I've had the privilege of working a lot with an NGO that I started called Father a Nation, and we do programs around the country focusing on gender-based violence. And when we started working with GBV, we realized that a lot of the work being done to counter gender-based violence is really just creating awareness. I don't know about you, but I've been to meeting after meeting after meeting, and you just hear the same statistics trotted out and how bad the situation is. And we've got to a point where we really do know how bad it is. And creating awareness is absolutely crucial. It's essential, but it's really just one part of the solution. Providing help for people who are victims of GBV is another crucial solution, but neither of those is going to stop gender-based violence happening. So I really delve deeply into why is it happening? Why does GBV happen? If you think about it, no boy is born an abuser. No boy comes out of his mother's womb with his DNA wired to be abusive. It's just not in the DNA of man. And we have such an assault really on masculinity at the moment, hashtag men are trash, toxic masculinity. And a lot of boys growing up are just, really on the back foot thinking, what is masculinity? It's toxic, it's bad, it's trash. I do a lot of talks with boys in high schools, and one of the things I asked them when I first started is could you take your cell phone right now and tweet out, "I'm so proud to be a man"? And many of them say, no, sir, I could never do that. I'll be cancelled. It's just not on. And that's a tragedy we're living in. We're living in a tragedy where boys are growing up with the belief that masculinity is trash, that it's toxic. And yet true masculinity is a beautiful, powerful, wonderful gift to humanity. Authentic masculinity is a gift. It's not a curse. Of course, it can become a curse, and that's what we need to examine why. Our president, after the GBV conference recently said, we need to redefine or reinvent masculinity. And I have to say, I disagree with him. I don't think we need to redefine it or reinvent it. I think we need to rediscover what it truly is. If you look historically, of course, there's been abuse. But if you look historically, the essence of masculinity, of chivalry, has been laying down your life. It's been serving. It's been using your strength for good. It's been loving, serving, giving. If you look at the example of just the Titanic, there's so many, a far higher percentage of the men on the Titanic died and drowned than women. And the reason was men were routinely giving up their places in lifeboats to women. And that's what masculinity is. Masculinity serves, it loves, it protects, it provides. And so we have to ask ourselves the question, why do men abuse? If it's not innate in the genetic structure of man, which it isn't, to abuse, why are men doing it? Something goes wrong. Something goes wrong on the journey from baby to boy and boy to man. On this journey up into adulthood, something horribly goes wrong. For a man to misuse his strength in such a horrendous way, something has been broken inside. And we need to look at this journey, the journey from boy to man. We're living in a country where up to 70% of kids are growing up in certain communities without a father. The national average is 60%. 60% don't have a present and engaged father. And this is such a crucial element of what happens to boys in their journey to manhood. Boys and girls need both moms and dads. The family unit is proven throughout history to be the most effective at raising healthy whole adults, both boys and girls. The link between fatherlessness and every single social ill is absolutely undeniable. I mean, the statistics coming out of the US are very clear. Teenage pregnancy, and this applies to boys and girls, teenage pregnancies, incarcerations, drug abuse, rape, anger, all these different things. The link to that and fatherlessness is absolutely, the correlation is just undeniable. And this is not an indictment on single moms. I think in terms of what single moms are doing in this nation, I mean, I just bow in reverence to single moms in this nation. I think they have done the most phenomenal, and continue to do the most phenomenal job of holding the fort and in passing on values, etc. But the one thing that, for instance, I cannot do as a father is I cannot teach my daughter how to be a woman, because I'm not a woman. I can teach her beautiful things. I can teach her work ethic and values and a whole range of beautiful, beautiful qualities. But I cannot teach her how to be a woman, because I'm not one. Just the same as a mother cannot teach her son how to be a man. She can model to him empathy and kindness and goodness and work ethic and values and also, I mean, a whole range of beautiful qualities. And that's what moms throughout this nation do. But what she cannot do is teach him how to be a man. There are two very key questions on the heart of every boy growing up, and they remain on the heart of most men. The one question is, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? If you look at the difference between boys and girls, I mean, it's one could go on for hours and hours. It's a fascinating study. We're more similar than different, but anyone who's raised the boy and raised the girl or been around boys and girls will see that they're very different behaviors. One of the things boys struggle with more than girls is impulse control. Boys have a high propensity for risk-taking and adventure, and also a lower degree of the ability to impulse control, and that's a recipe for some trouble, You take a bicycle and give it to a young girl, and a bicycle and give it to a young boy, and observe those bicycles and see the condition of those bikes after 2 weeks. Guaranteed there's going to be a big difference in the quality and the standard and the condition of those bicycles. Because for a boy, it's not enough just to ride from A to B. He's got to go no hands. He's got to ramp over things. He's got to ride into brick walls. There's a certain craziness. There's a certain hormonal wildness that drives boys. I often liken raising a boy to learning how to drive a car, and masculinity to a vehicle. A vehicle is a beautiful thing. We all use cars every single day. From A to B, we use a car. But a car is also a dangerous thing. Many, many thousands of people are killed on the roads every year by cars that are driven badly, that have accidents. And you can only learn how to drive a car if someone who's driven a car, knows how to drive a car, teaches you. You cannot learn how to drive a car by watching a YouTube clip, for instance. And masculinity is very much the same. It's a beautiful gift to humanity, but if it's not driven properly, if boys don't learn how to drive this thing called masculinity, it can become very dangerous. With a vehicle, you come to a red light, you stop. You come to a stop street, you stop. There are lines which you need to adhere to, stick to within the road. There are certain speed limits. There are rules of the road. And these are taught by a driving instructor to a young person learning how to drive a car. A young boy growing up with masculinity, with the hormones and the upper body strength that he has and the propensity for adventure and craziness, needs to be taught how to drive this thing called masculinity. And he needs to be taught how to drive that by a man. And so when we live in a country where upwards of 60% of boys and girls, but we're talking about boys, how that goes wrong, grow up without a father to teach them, we have a recipe for a serious disaster. I think of my son, Luke, who's now 29 years old, and I've always loved doing DIY. And when Luke was growing up, I used to often be drilling at something in the house, in the workshop. And Luke was fascinated by this. He used to come over and look at the drill, and you could just see he was itching. He wanted to get involved in this drilling. And of course, there was a period of time when he was too young to get involved in the drill, but he observed me drilling for many, many years. Then there came a time when I said to him, Luke, do you want to try this out? And he said, yes, Dad, yes. And I allowed him to put his hands on the drill as I held his hands, and we together drilled safely. Then there came a time after a few years where I said, okay, do you want to try it by yourself? And he said, yes, yes, yes. And I watched him drill. I took my hands off, but I was right there to supervise him. And I had taught him all the safety protocols and how to tighten the chuck and the bit, and he knew how to drill. But I was supervising. And then there was a time when he'd left the house, when I left the house, where he was absolutely adept at handling a drill himself. And that's the phases that boys need to go through. A phase of observing positive, good masculinity, doing masculinity well, loving the mother of the child, respecting women, respecting human beings as equals, walking in love and humility. He needs to observe an older man doing that. Then he needs to get very shoulder to shoulder with older men in terms of doing life. This is how we do things together. And then he needs to be under the supervision of older men, teaching him, disciplining him, showing him how to do life. And then he needs to be set free to actually live his life as a man who's been taught and raised how to be a good man. We don't have that in South Africa, sadly. We have up to 60, as I mentioned, the stat, horrible. Over 60% of boys are growing up without a man in the house or a man in close proximity behaving how men should behave, modeling the way, and then mentoring him, and then teaching him, and then supervising him, and then disciplining him and leading him into this thing called adult masculinity. So if we look at the journey from boy to man, there are three very key players in a boy's life, a girl's life too, but we're talking about boys and where it goes wrong. Number one is his father. And the question a boy asks of his father is, Dad, do I have what it takes? You see, when I gave Luke the drill and said, you can drill now, I validated his ability to do that. And boys need that validation. You know, I often say to women, you know, what do you think men desire most from you as a woman? And the answer is not what you think it is. The answer is respect. Men crave and desire respect. And young boys growing up need to know that they're powerful. You see, on the heart of every boy, and I love a book written by a guy called John Eldridge. He writes a book called Wild at Heart. And he talks about the three drivers of the masculine soul. And he says, the one is a desire for a battle to fight. The one is the desire for an adventure to live. And the third is the desire for a beauty to pursue. Battle, adventure, and beauty are written into the masculine soul. If you look at the movies men love, they all have a battle to fight. They all have a wild adventure, the car chase, and they all have the beauty, the reason for which they're doing all these crazy and nutty things. Battle, adventure, and beauty is built into the heart of men, and men need to be taught how to control that desire for battle, adventure, and beauty in such a way that it brings benefit to the world. But what it also does is it creates this question on a boy's heart. Do I have what it takes to fight the battles that life's going to throw at me, to live the adventure, the bigger life, the purpose that for which I've been created? And do I have what it takes to win the heart of a beauty and to win her heart over and to love her and to be with her and be faithful to her? Do I have what it takes? Men who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s still have this question. Do I have what it takes? It's why you see posturing amongst men, and you see posing amongst men, and you see men doing all kinds of crazy things. It's a desire to prove that I've got what it takes. I'm the man. And so many men grow up playing the man because they don't believe they are the man. So the first key player in a boy's life is his father. And the question is that the father needs to answer is, son, you've got what it takes. You're the man. You don't have to play the man to be the man. You are the man. You know how to drill. You can handle the drill. And I've taught you how to do it. The second key question he asks his father is, show me how to be a man. Please, Dad, show me what it means to be a man. I need younger boys look to older men to teach them what it means to be a man. And sadly, often young boys look at the vices and not the virtues of older men and think that that's what true masculinity is. So a boy growing up in an abusive household will look at the vice of his father and think that that's what it takes to be a man. And he'll copy that. So these two key questions, am I enough? Am I big enough, strong enough, cool enough, fast enough? And please show me, model to me, teach me how to be a man, how to do life. The second key player is his mother. The mother is the most important woman in a boy's life. And he looks to his mother too, to model to him. How should a man treat a woman? What kind of behavior is his mother accepting from men? The other thing that a mom needs to do is give him permission to be wild. Permission. You see, a mother's natural instinct is to nurture, is to protect. And that's beautiful. That's how things are. So a young boy will go up to his mom and say, Mom, I want to climb that tree. And the real question he's asking is, do I have what it takes? I want to climb the tree. Do I have what it takes? And the mom's natural instinct is, no, don't climb the tree. You're going to hurt yourself. And too much coddling, too much protecting, too much doing things for his son who should be doing themselves can damage the son, damage him in the sense that he feels as though, gee, I don't have what it takes. And I'm not man enough to do this. And a mom or woman in society who are accepting behavior from men that's not acceptable models to the son, that's okay. That kind of behavior is okay. So moms play a very crucial role in raising their sons too. And then, of course, society. society, the messaging that society gives boys plays a huge role. And really the four big lies that society teaches men are sex, power, money, and big boys don't cry. These are the, boys grow up thinking that the more woman I have, the more the man I am. The more power, the more money, that makes me a man. And by the way, big boys don't cry. And these are such tremendous lies that we give to boys. A fifth lie that's happening now in a very woke society is that boys are toxic and that masculinity is bad and the desire for a battle to fight is wrong and that boys need to be feminized. That's another very destructive message. But those four key lies, sex, power, money, and big boys don't cry, are the formula for toxic masculinity. Boys who grow up thinking that that's what masculinity is without a father teaching them differently grow up, and that's the kind of thing they're going to do to appear to be a man. So I've given a bit of a background, a very brief background, which should be done in a weekend seminar, and we often do it in 15 minutes, of the journey from boy to man. And let's quickly jump into 4 reasons why men abuse. And we've got to distinguish between reasons and excuses, because there's no excuse. There's never an excuse. A reason helps us understand why it's happening so we can fix it. An excuse is justification, and there's no justification. Number 1 reason men abuse is wounded masculinity. They arrive at adulthood wounded and damaged in their masculinity, with a deep sense of inadequacy, with a sense of, I have to do all sorts of things to be a man. And that produces 2 negative effects. Either they become very passive, they withdraw, they fail to stand up, they fail to speak up, they become passive, spineless, and a passive man can also withdraw into all kinds of addictions. We see pornography, we're drinking, gambling, addictions that men have. They're withdrawing from life because that's what makes them feel okay. The second thing men can do, wounded men, is they can become aggressive and abusive. They feel like a need to dominate. It's the man who can never say I'm sorry. It's the man who needs to always be right. It's the man who needs to abuse. It's a man who can't accept the word no from a woman. He has to push in and take what's not his. So number 1 reason is wounded masculinity. Number 2 reason is false concepts of what it means to be a man. A lot of boys grow up with a very distorted notion of masculinity. I had a student once at a university put up his hand and he said to me, "Sir, would you pay for milk from a cow that you own?" He was referring to the concept of lobola. I paid lobola, therefore I own her, I can do whatever I want. And unfortunately, that sense of ownership is often what boys grow up with. And it's a cultural misconception. It's not the correct interpretation of lobola. And a lot of men have that sense. I own you, you're mine, So when we have a false concept of masculinity, we often dominate and we abuse and we take what's not ours because we don't know what masculinity is. I've written a booklet called The 6-Pack of Masculine Virtues, which outlines the 6 virtues that make a man a good man. And the very first one is he uses his strength for good. Never fails to use it, never abuses it, uses it for good. So number 1 reason, wounded masculinity. Number 2 reason, a false notion of what it means to be a man. Number 3 reason is false concepts and beliefs about the value of woman. This world, every one of us exists today because a man and a woman got together and co-created us. And men and women are equal co-creators of a beautiful world. And as long as we feel one is subservient to the other, we're never going to create a beautiful world. This world is beautiful when men and women as equals, not as same. Same is not equal. Equal is not same. But as equals, co-create a beautiful future. Men who believe that women are less than or should only occupy certain roles or positions are far more prone to be abusive. And the 4th reason is emasculating circumstances. We live in a country where unemployment is rife, where many men are just utterly emasculated. We have a history of emasculation of men, of breaking up of households, and we have men that feel deeply emasculated. So when you take those 4 together, wounded masculinity, wounded men, feeling inadequate, need to prove myself, false concepts and notions of masculinity, false beliefs that women are less than me, and emasculating circumstances, you have a perfect storm in which gender-based violence will continue to thrive. Sadly, that's my time up. I don't have time to get into solutions, and perhaps that'll be for another day.